Welcome back to America Decides. The Atlantic magazine has new reporting that claims former President Trump praised the control Hitler had over his military. According to the magazine, Trump at one point or another said, and I quote, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had, people who were totally loyal to him, that follow orders." Opinion columnist for the New York Times, David French, joins us now. David, it's great to have you with us. You wrote today something I want to talk to you about in the context of these most recent reported comments. You said the best way to think about this race between former President Trump and Vice President Harris as a battle between a movement and a coalition, and that MAGA, the movement behind former President Trump, has a high floor and a low ceiling. What did you mean by those characterizations, and how do you think they fit into the way we should evaluate these most recent quotes attributed to Trump?
Yeah, when you're thinking about MAGA, the core Trump supporters, they really believe they're part of almost like a revolutionary movement. They believe that the world is against them. They're full of purpose and mission in supporting Donald Trump. And they're really in this place that is something that we've really not seen in modern American politics, and that they're in a place of near total devotion or total devotion. And so Trump, in that way, has pocketed just tens of millions of voters who he can count on absolutely no matter what. But the problem for him is that an enormous number of Americans look at that movement and are appalled by it. You know, they see comments like those that were reported in The Atlantic, where he talks about the loyalty that he demands of generals and wanting the loyalty that you saw from generals towards, or some of the generals towards Hitler. And they look at that and they're repulsed by it, utterly repulsed. Whereas members of his movement either just don't believe he said it at all or don't care, because that's nothing compared to the larger goal. And so he's got tens of millions of people who are going to support him no matter what. And Kamala Harris doesn't have the same kind of cultish movement behind her. So she has to assemble, like a jigsaw puzzle, people from a bunch of different walks of American life, from the left to the right, to try to defeat this movement. So she's got higher potential support because there's more people who oppose Trump than support Trump in America. But at the same time, she doesn't have that devoted base, and that's what makes her vulnerable.
David, do you have any sense that this movement behind Trump sometimes beguiles even Trump, meaning he leans into it even more than he otherwise would if he was looking at this election more strategically?
Absolutely, it beguiles Trump. He loves the roar of the crowd. He uses his crowds as sort of a kind of focus group to know what to focus on, to what to talk about more and in the public square. So there is absolutely no question that this beguiles him, and it also beguiles his movement. They have this symbiotic relationship where they reinforce each other. But at the same time, as they're doing it, as they're reinforcing each other, and as they're radicalizing, they're repelling and repulsing millions more Americans. And so that's why throughout the Trump era, the Trump movement has always been smaller. Remember, it's never won a popular vote. It's always been smaller than the Democratic coalition. But because of the Electoral College, because of the precise nature of the Trump movement, it has some advantages on election day. And that's why it's constantly a threat to win.
And in that regard, David, when you talk to Trump inner circle members, they say he's never been better positioned. All the things that you just talked about, David, may be true, but Trump's never been better positioned, meaning there is a resilience to this movement that even now, the third time around, pollsters are still missing. How do you assess that?
Well, there's no question he's well positioned to win. I mean, I think anyone who's looking at this would say this race is a toss-up. So he's well positioned to win. But he's been well positioned to win every time he's run because of the same reason. And that reason, he has this huge, rock-solid base of support. So in any given election, he just has to add a few more additional voters to put himself right in contention, right into the thick of everything. So yeah, they're right. He is well positioned to win because he has this giant, giant base. And also he's well positioned because he's a challenger, and some Americans are not happy with the direction of the country. So even if they don't particularly love Trump, they'll view him as their only option for voting for change. And so, yeah, he is well positioned. However, at the same time, if you had a different Republican running, one who had a capacity to reach out beyond the base, I think they'd be running away with this election now. They wouldn't just be well positioned to win, they would be possessing a commanding lead and highly likely to win. So Trump's base is both a strong uh, component of his support, but the relationship he has with this base and the nature of MAGA also limits his appeal.
David French, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.